everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today, we're going to be looking at Sometimes Stories #1, an English comic published in May 1977. Now, this is why this is important. Other than fanzine work, this is the first professional comic from Brendan McCarthy and Brett Ewins, too. Also Jim McCarthy, Brendan's brother, all three of who very soon after this went on to join the 2000 AD crew. I believe 2000 AD was coming out right as this was coming out. I could have researched that, but from my comic knowledge that's kind of rattling around my brain, I think this is right around the time 2000 AD is coming out. And it's kind of fascinating because it's an independent comic. They own all the copyrights. Somehow they got the money together. Full color cover, British comic size, like Beano or not 2000 AD, but like Near Myths, a lot of those English comics. But this was pretty much like a ground level comic in England, just like Near Myths or Brainstorm comics. We see here this cover. It's by McCarthy and Ewins. Even at this young age, they were in college at the time. So I don't think they were even, close to being professionals, real professionals. But pretty soon after college, I think they would. I think they started drawing for 2000 AD pretty early on. I gotta say, they got chops. But also, these character designs are terrible. No matter how well they were drawn. These guys just make me not want to buy this comic. It's just stupid character designs, or just kind of annoying. But there's so much weird, interesting stuff in here. It's a young Brendan McCarthy. He's not the genius yet. And there's very sophomoric stuff in here. But I find it very interesting. So we have an editorial by the two talking about how they got the financing, their plans for the future. And there wasn't much of a future for them. Hourglass Publishing was the name of their outfit. This was the only issue. I don't think Hourglass published anything else. So we have a prologue. And this is by both Milligan and, McCarthy and Ewins. How do you pronounce that? Ewins? Whatever. They both ended up being really great cartoonists. And you can see there's some good stuff going on here. Illustrative stuff, just like the folds in clothing and stuff. These guys definitely had chops. So this main story that this prologue is for these characters. I believe they're called Adler and McCool. And it's a very kind of an undergroundy type comic where it's all about kind of just having gags. But more than that, it seems like these two just want to do pop culture references of all the things they like. Almost every panel has all this chicken fat in the background where they're either shouting out one of their favorite bands or their favorite cartoonists or comics. Let's look at the first page here. We see Adler and McCool. They're apparently, there's all these monuments are being stolen. The Pyramid of Cheops has been stolen somehow. And also, they've received this mysterious green box with a keyhole and no key. And so look at this first page, guys. We see Ignat's mouse coming out of a little mouse hole. We see a shadow comic. Batman dies is a headline on the back page. A little picture of Marvel Man. And is just peppered throughout with this kind of shout-outs, I think I did the same thing when I was 18, 19, 20, when I started publishing fanzines. I always try to squeeze in little, this is what I like. So they have this almost anthropomorphic radio. And I love the face on this guy. Just this angry, screaming face, just yelling out news headlines. McCool shuts it up by squirting it with beer. And there's even references to Starsky and Hutch, but they call it Husky and Starch. See the chops they got here? Look at the hair here. This is some of these panels are really fine drawing. I kind of have a feeling it's more McCarthy, though. I hate to say it. He's the better illustrator of the two. It seems like McCool has slight precognitive powers. He says, aren't you going to pick up the phone? And it hasn't even rung yet. And then it rings. And he's just like, I wish you'd stop doing that, McCool. It's annoying. So they get a phone call. And apparently it's the ministry, the government. And someone's just stolen the big stones at Stonehenge. So they're called in. They're kind of like private detectives, you know. I like the way that he draws that radio. So this radio, I guess he's shut up now because he's drinking all their beer. He's got kind of a drinking problem. So they drive up to Stonehenge, and all the stones are gone, replaced by these grandfather clocks. This episode's called The Mystery of the Green Box. This is chapter 1. So one of them, though, is almost like a slot machine. It has a big handle. And McCool pulls the lever to see what'll happen. And out of these grandfather clocks come all of these almost time-lost characters. We see a Mohican Indian, a cowboy, some kind of cavalier. We see some kind of like 30s stereotypical robber with the striped shirt. And they attack our heroes. So we get a nice little fight scene. I like this weird guy here. I guess he's a future cyborg dude. And it looks like Adler and McCool are getting their asses handed to them. I don't know why this reminds me of Bob Burden so much. It's even though it's more illustrative, but very just silly and nuts. Look at this great panel here, though. Look at the illustration here, the wrinkles in his pants. I mean, these young kids, they were on their way already. So they both get their clocks cleaned, and it seems like the time lost, whatever, warriors just disappear. Here we see the aftermath of the battle, and they're all pretty hurting. And then all of a sudden, they see someone coming this way. And it's this woman, Marjorie Daw. It's just such fanzine art, that face. It's see, that's the thing. They're pretty good at drawing like wrinkles, like the things that are hard for young artists to draw. Even hands are pretty good at. And yet, you know, faces they're still not that good at. And you see that in a lot of young cartoonists that could do some flashy stuff, but they're still not very good at drawing faces. There's something off about them. Their forehead's way too big, I think. Something's weird about it. So she says she's a professor, and she's been investigating the theft of these, you know, monuments throughout the world. And she's going on and on about, you know, her theories about who might have stolen these. She says these objects have one common factor. They're all power centers, but centers for a very special type of energy, archetypal energy. Maybe that's why all those archetypes came out of the clocks. These monuments are being collected to form a colossal archetypal power bomb, which could set loose a wave of psychic energy large enough to alter the fabric of existence. Kind of like an entropy bomb. So she knows that they have to go to Easter Island. She knows that's where the epicenter of all this weirdness is. So our heroes head out They got some crap to do before they go on this journey to Easter Island. Once again, we see all these like references here. This is actually the Red Slug, who we'll see later in the issue. That's another character from the Hourglass Comics group. We see some kind of Superman guy flying down the sidewalk. And they chat with Slug. And now they go into this, they're like, hey, let's go to the record store while we're here. We see the Spirit. I don't know who this guy is, but he looks pretty cool. And they meet Brendan McCarthy and Brett Ewins. And they say, hey, how's your comic coming along? And they take a jab at Brainstorm Comics. They say, our comic's doing great. We're licking the hell out of that other crowd, Brainstodge Comics, or whatever they're called. Kind of weird that there's only like 2 or 3 ground level comics and they're shitting on them. White Lead, White Light, White Dread by Brett Ewins. There's all these posters on the wall. Pink Floyd Assassinated, Much Joy, because these guys were probably into punk. It says famed artist Staten eaten by frogs. I wonder if that's Joe Staten. So, they're record shopping. I like how Alder, he finds an obscure Patrick Magoo and Brian Eno album with Andy Warhol on vocals. We see that McCool is buying some Prisoner VHSs, which I thought was interesting. 77, and this could have been written in 76. Did anyone have a VHS back then? I thought that was before. Only maybe millionaires had them then. Whatever. So now they're on this little raft and they're heading to Easter Island with what's her? I already forgot her name. Marjorie. So they make it to Easter Island. Some well-drawn Easter Island tiki heads or whatever they're called. And one of the heads starts talking to them. He says, the fate of the whole world is now in your hands. Look to the west. Some bizarre things have been happening on this island. And basically they find all the monuments. The Pyramid of Cheops, Stonehenge. But there's this weird little house that looks like someplace that Smokey Stover would live in or something. Or the Toonerville trolley people. He tells the Easter Island statue, says, you'll find your answer in that house. And now things get really trippy. This is where we can really see the young Brendan McCarthy at work. So they go inside the house, and there's a guy in there who's all tied up. There's things floating around him, little clocks, a yo-yo, a spoon. He says, I am the reason. He says, the reason is what I am. The reason is what I must be. I am not to blame for the entropy bomb. My stepbrother is. But first, let me get you some refreshments. And he calls his robot butler James. And it seems like James has got a bunch of wires loose. He's pretty incompetent. He pours them a bottle full of cigarette butts. He pours them a quote-unquote drink. And he's got the statue of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And he cuts it and says, oh, would you like some food? Now that the reason is out of the shadows, very cool, psychedelic, weird shit going on from Brendan McCarthy. I'm just assuming, but I've read a lot of Brendan McCarthy. And I'm pretty sure this is kind of his idea. They say, why are you tied up like that? He says, I'm not tied up. This is simply what I have become. He tells them that when reason ruled the planet long ago, I was strong enough to keep the forces of my stepbrother in check, but not anymore. So basically his brother is Entropy. And it looks like Entropy is winning the battle. So he tells them that he's in the back room. They run up the stairs. They open the door. And look at this. All that art that kind of looked like fanzine-ish, this is full-on Brendan McCarthy. That is amazing. I love this drawing. I am the reason for man's existence. I am the reason's brother. Men call me Crinkum Crankum. To be continued. And we'll never find out what happens. I just love this fucking weird character. This is amazing stuff. I know it reminds me of like guys like Edward Sorrell or something, or those like caricaturists who make everyone's head big, but it's so much cooler and weirder. It's just really neat. Love that page. This is worth the whole price of admission, I think. And it is so Brendan McCarthy. It, even 10 years after this, you know, just seems like something he would draw. We have a little pinup of Alder and McCool and the Red Slug. I think this character is called the Wimp. I guess they, in the editorial, I forgot to mention, they brag about how, like, we have 300 characters and we're going to slowly introduce them in every issue. Hopefully we'll be around for a while and, you know, we can introduce you to all these crazy characters we created. And one of the ways to do this is by having these little strips. Squeeze in as many ideas and characters as they can. So this is called Hourglass Short Stories. We see The Wimp by J. Arthur Biffo. I think a lot of these are pseudonyms. It's either McCarthy or Ewins. God, I know I'm saying that wrong. Ewins? It sounds so dumb. So this is these are just kind of mostly just gag strips. This says it's The Adventures of John Robertson by the Transitory College of Art. Cap'n Conundrum, written by Dr. G.P. Rice, drawn by Brett Ewins. None of these are very good, to be honest. King Canute and King Canute by Mick Bodman. Herman by Brendan McCarthy. This guy's weird. He looks like a mix of those Dave Sheridan Nerds characters from Ripoff Comics and Dilbert. All of these are just very odd. See, here's an example. Obviously, this is McCarthy and Ewins because it's drawn just like that radio in the story. But it says The Radio by Felix Adler and Finn McCool. The characters. Here's a Brett Ewins strip. It says Brett down here. We see this Rastafarian guy. And then we have Dell and the Ant by Roger Kaputnik, who is the guy from Dave Berg's Lighter Side comics. I kind of like this, how the radio barfs up these spiders. And we see them fall. And they're peppering the bottom of the page here. Kind of fun. So this is really interesting. So this is Jim McCarthy, who he would collaborate with his brother Brendan on a bunch of stuff over the years and do solo stuff. It's called Spheres. It's a one-pager. And this is just kind of like some weird art comic where we just see these beautifully drawn backgrounds and just these black spheres floating through the sky. One of them breaks into a window, and that's it. It's I don't know, just some artsy-fartsy exercise, I guess. Next we have The Gruff. It says copyright Brendan McCarthy, so this is solo. And this is kind of a fun story. So I guess there's 3 Gruff brothers. They keep calling them villains, even though they don't necessarily act villainous or anything. So first we have Nose Gruff, who's a giant nose. He says, "Oh, I want to fatten up. I see a nice meadow across this bridge. I'm going to go to the other side of the river and have my fill of the great grass there." And a troll comes out from the river and says, "I'm going to gobble you up." He says, "Oh, I'm too small for you. You know, my brother's coming right after me. He's right behind me. He's way bigger. He'll be a better meal." So it's the story of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. But I never understood that story. Like, why wouldn't the troll just eat everyone? Like, oh, I'm not going to eat you. I'm going to wait. I mean, when I'm hungry, I'll just keep eating things that come my way. So just like in the story, it works. The troll's like, okay, you can pass. And then Royal Blank, that's the name of his first brother, the villain, kind of almost like Mr. A, except he's got a line through his face, and does the same thing. I hate to say it, but I think I like this art more than Finn and McCool. It looks a little less fanzine-y. I think Ewins isn't quite at McCarthy's level yet. That's my assumption. And so when they work together, Ewins is kind of bringing McCarthy down. And we'll definitely see this in the next strip. And finally, their brother, who's called Mr. Screet Knight. And this looks like a crazy McCarthy idea. And he doesn't even bother crossing the bridge. He's got a troll detector and some crazy kind of weapon. And before the troll can even, say his stupid rhyme, he just blasts him with this, I don't know, it's some kind of like shadow ray, night ray. The troll falls in the river, never to be seen again. And the three brothers have their fill of all the sweet grass they want. Very odd. So this is even odder in a way. This is, okay, so Finn McCool. Finn again awakes. And this is all by Brendan McCarthy. First of all, the art is way finer on this. Even though I still hate that face. I don't know why. It just looks annoying. Part 1, the fairy stone. For father and father and fathers before them. And this is so interesting because it's so serious. It's like Brendan McCarthy's trying to tell like a comic, almost like a Vertigo comics 10 years later. It's a very kind of this melancholy, sad story. The prose is kind of purplish, but it's not bad. I'll give you like an example. Just the tone shift. Because, Finn and McCool is like some goofy underground, And this is just very serious. And it's a something in the air, you said. You called it the presence of the night. But at that hour, it made no difference. You could not sleep, so you walked for a few miles. You had to think, clear the mind, try and work out what was happening to you. You sat down by the sea, and half asleep, you tried to remember. So it's kind of this sad story where Finn's just like trying to remember earlier parts of his life, mourning the things that have passed, even the years and days that have passed, and all kind of written like that. So I just found this very curious that wow. And the art, even though I don't like his character design, I mean, look at the hairs here. I think he was very much under the influence of Barry Windsor Smith. A lot of these panels, the hair floating in the wind, kind of remind me of Barry Windsor Smith. But there's also a lot of other influences in here. So it's almost like a prose poem. And then this old guy shows up. His name's Johnny. And he says, "What brings you out here tonight?" And Finn says, "To think, Johnny, and remember." And the old man says, "Those days are gone, Finn. They will never return. Sure, many a good soul has slipped away back into the dust that we'll never see like or sound of again. What's the use of remembering?" This is some really nice illustration here. That really reminds me of Barry Windsor Smith. It almost looks like a goofier version of that Rune character he had, that vampire in Malibu at the Ultraverse. And Finn is scared. He's scared of these things from the past. And Johnny says, "Ancient Ireland is buried. I tell you, she will not harm you again." I wish I could do a brogue better, but I just embarrassed myself. But Finn doesn't believe it. He says, "Can't you read the signs? The night is black with every kind of rumor known to man. I am fearful the eldermen will rise again. Mark my words, the dust will walk." And then it says, "Next, the awakening." And we'll never find out what the hell they're talking about. But this is some impressive stuff. Especially he's just still in college. He hasn't really even become a professional yet. We see an ad for all these badges and t-shirts you can buy and posters. And now we have The Red Slug, which is a solo work by Brett Ewins. And I guess this kind of has a Bob Burden feel to it too, because this is this weird, goofy superhero. Apparently this old guy, Quince, he was the mentor to the Red Slug. He taught him everything he knew, trained him, and he's dying. So his last words are like, triumph over the forces of chaos and, fight evil. And so now we see later, he just drives around looking for crime, I guess. But he's totally just a normal dude who's just like, Jesus, what a boring night. I must be mad scouring this damn city every night looking for criminals. What a waste of time. I need a drink. This superhero business is a washout. So he just decides to go to a bar. There's a portrait of Popeye on the wall for some reason. And the bartender kind of looks like the Joker. Like Marshall Rogers' version of the Joker. And all of a sudden, this crazy dude, Mr. Villainy, breaks through the wall. We see the wimp in the background here. And he's threatening the Red Slug. And the Red Slug just looks like he just kicks him in the nuts. And I guess that's his superpower. He pokes his eyes. So he's got Three Stooges power. This infuriates the villain. He says, I'm gonna hurt you. But the Red Slug just slugs him. I like the sound effect, nut. And then the bartender, he says, well, you got to pay for all the damages to my bar since that guy's knocked out. He's like, are you serious? Get the fuck out of here. And so it looks like the Red Slug just can't win. He's a big loser. And that's it for Sometimes Toys, a very interesting little curio of comics history. I'm pretty sure this didn't sell very well. I wonder if it was sold on newsstands, because it looks like it could, be on a newsstand with full color cover. It's the right size for English comics, but I don't know much about it. And I don't know where I picked this up. Can't remember. I think I might have not even known what it was when I picked it up. Though it does say McCarthy Ewins on the cover, which ever since I was like 16, that, I love those guys. So yeah, I have no clue when I bought this, what year I bought it, why I bought it. Well, I kind of know why I bought it, even though these guys would have made me not want to buy it. But knowing that it was Brendan McCarthy, I was in. And Brett Ewins too. But I'm much more of a fan of Brendan McCarthy. He's one of my favorites of all time. So hope you guys like looking at this very bizarre little thing. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.